What the hell? Hang on a second. I love that background music when I leave the other window open. How we doing, guys? Everybody, welcome to a special edition of Balmer's Hit List. I'm your host, Nathan Balmer Brown. With me are my partners and I would say fair to Midland smart people about college football. And that would be Rock and Rant and Moen. How you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Doing good. Looking for the fourth person that fills that smart slot. Maybe you meant Moen.
Well, the fourth slot actually would be you, but he's off today. So we haven't been really doing shows on Thursdays. The hit list is really an ad hoc type show. And I'm really glad we get to do it today because big news, private equity, Big 12, naming Big 12, all these things at the Big 12, and Brett Yormark's out in front trying to generate more money for his conference. And we'll talk about that. We'll kind of see how that goes. And we're very glad you guys are here. First of all, I just want to give a quick shout out for everybody that's watching tonight. Make sure you follow us all on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Turn on those notifications. And last but not least, consider becoming a member of the College Football Mafia Network. How do they go about doing that, Mon?
Yeah, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can just select join next to the subscribe button. Likewise, you can alternatively go to the little cash sign at the bottom of the chat window. That'll allow you to become a member, gift a membership, or leave us a super chat.
And that's what keeps us going, everybody. We love the super chats, but those members are really big deals, and we like getting more people under the banner of the College Football Mafia Network. So we appreciate everybody for being here. Before I do shout outs, just really quick, give me 30 seconds. What was your lead takeaway from the news today, Rock?
I think for me, it was not shocking that Brett Yormark and the Big 12 were the first ones to try to make the bold move to give themselves flexibility, right? It's been rumored. Others might be further down the road as a school or anything like that, as we've heard about. But for it to come out intentionally from the Big 12 made all the sense in the world. It just sort of fits the dynamic and personality of why he's doing what he's doing. And we can go into what it may or may not mean.
Exactly. I love it. Moen, what were your first thoughts?
Holy shit. And then I composed myself and I realized this is a boost for the Big 12, but it's also a dagger in the heart of the ACC.
Yeah, so that's where my thoughts went. We didn't talk about this before the show started, so I wasn't sure what you guys were going to say. But for me, it is that it's another shot across the bow for the ACC. Once Florida State leaves, once Clemson leaves, which more than likely, once Miami leaves, it's going to be a conference that's extremely hurting. And all Brett Yormark's doing is putting his hand up and saying, this is what we're doing. We're not sitting back waiting to be dictated to. We're trying to get proactive and get out in front of some of this news that they know is eventually going to be in college sports, but it's not here now, right? Is that kind of what you guys are thinking?
Absolutely. To me, he's doing two things amongst probably more. One, he's signaling to his member schools that I got you and I'm out here doing what we can do. And secondarily, he's sending the biggest smoke signals to other universities and conferences that are under pressure, like the almost closed conference known as the ACC. And that's my new one for the day.
I was just saying, that's new. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it just hit me in the moment, but it sort of fits, right? It might be the way I can do a trademark infringement and not get sued.
Right.
But he's doing the smoke. And it's not like those schools didn't know that there's things going on, but it's making it really obvious to their broader communities that can make noise or be asking questions, whether that changes the game. But he's making it clear, that he sees a tidal wave going and, I'm open for business, especially in parallel with the remarks last week, where one day he said, we're not doing anything. And the next day he talks to Arizona, Ford, and universities about what could happen.
Right. Right. And he's doing his best. I think he's doing the best thing he can for the conference. And honestly, being the third best conference is not the smallest thing in the world, because there's still a lot of money out there. They're certainly going to be able to keep competing on the football field. And it's just about hanging on with your fingernails and making your conference relevant. All right, well, let's get some shout outs, and then we'll get to the news and sort of work through that. So let's start with Joaquin Morales. First guy in the house. Hey, College Football Mafia family. Don't forget to smash that like button. We appreciate it. Thank you so much, Joaquin. We really appreciate it. Timothy Green, second, says, let's get ready for another great show. These guys are both members of the Mafia family, and we really, really appreciate them. Third is Buckshot Kid, another member. Oh, hey, at the College Football Mafia. Thank you very much for getting that name right. We appreciate you guys helping us with the transition to go into this larger brand. We have more stuff to come with that, too. Dan Miter, another member, says, hello, All-State Mafia Big 12. I'm not sure what that logo is. What's the...
That's the Big 12 logo. It's All-State Big 12. So we're going to rename the show the All-State Mafia Show. I'm going to try and get a sponsorship.
I was going to say, I haven't received a check on that, Mo, and so you'll have to let me know if that actually happens. He also says the state of Utah loving this, pay NIL and Social Security for the athletes. We support that. We want the athletes to get as much as they possibly can. Andrew Ferguson, another member, says, first take, private equity is a terrible idea for college football. Letting more snakes into the room. Looking forward to the show. What do you think about that, Rock?
I think that I totally get the intent, but the snakes were already in the room. They've been in the room. They've been at your local car dealership. They've been all over the place. They're just coming in through the front door wearing a suit and carrying cash formally.
It's very true. I think private equity is invested, I think, in every conference or every sporting thing around the world, except for maybe the NFL. I don't think private equity is in the NFL, but it's in pure Premier League. It's in all the international soccer leagues, La Liga. I mean, it's all over. Private equity's taken over. And of course, a lot of that money comes from the sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East. And that's where a lot of the money comes. There was some jokes today. Is Saudi Arabia going to be underwriting the Big 12? I don't know if they write a big enough check. I could see it happening.
Yeah, I think people will be happy whether they may not be the Big 12, maybe they will, but I guarantee they're going to be doing some universities directly. So,
yeah, absolutely. Miami might be one of those. Antoine Codes, another member, says, hello, everyone. Not sure what to think about the news. Obviously, CVC, right, sees potential growth in the Big 12. Could the new 16-team conference be undervalued at 31-7? I don't know. And then he says, let's go. I personally think they are undervalued right now. Moen, what do you think about that?
I think they're valued accurately right now. But they get this money, they put it into the programs, they get some winners on the field. That's when the value goes up.
Right. I completely agree. What do you want to say anything else about that, Rock?
No, I think that, I think you'd had a really good point about valuations and money and what this money might be used for earlier today, and how it could be broken down to money that's going to the individual schools, but it's also like creating a war chest that gives you flexibility to potentially play for the longer play of what does it mean if you are able to leverage that cash into expanding the conference to improve your media rights deal going forward and cash flow in the future.
I personally think that's where the money should go. I don't think it should be doled out 6 million here, 6 million there. I think they need to reinvest it in the conference and try to get at least 4 more schools to come in. Even if that means you pay part of their leaving fee to leave the ACC, it has to be invested in the future. If they just threw it back into the programs without any planning or anything else, I would think that would be a mistake. So I know this private equity doesn't come in and just try to get their money overnight. They like to string out their ownership interests, because the longer they own these pieces, the more value they have in whatever they bought into. So, yeah, we'll have to see. Time will tell. But I appreciate the comment, Antoine Coates. Thank you. Let's see. Dallas Marquez says, let's go. Another member. The man, the mystery, Ryan Willie, the evil badger is in the house. Good to see you. Appreciate you being on Greg's show with your comments. You too, Rock, and Moen. All three of you guys were on Greg's show today.
You woke me up.
Okay, all right. Don in Kansas says, good evening, guys. Thanks for being here, Don. Appreciate everybody being here on a special night. Thursday nights tend to be our off nights, so this was really good, though. I appreciate everybody coming with us. Sergeant Pickle says, good afternoon, all, and welcome to the Buc-ee's Big 12. Look, I don't even care who is over the conference name. Do you guys care about your conferences?
Well, I hate my conference, so they can call it whatever they want, long as they call it the Gone Conference. But I think it's just fun to play off of. Do you call one of the G5 school conferences the Little Tykes Conference or something?
Right.
It's like torturing with alternate names for schools and teams you don't like. Like, what kind of fun play off the conference names can you come up with, which maybe we can do as a side hustle on the chat here tonight?
Moen, what do you think about it?
No, I don't want it for the Big Ten. The Big Ten is the Big Ten, regardless if we have 20 schools or 24 schools.
It will be the Big Ten presented by, just to follow the Rose Bowl model, right?
I think that's going to happen. I do. It's free money. And all you're doing is adding a little tag to it. I don't know. I get where Moen's traditionalist, and I think most people that are over the age of 25 love those original names. But the world's changing, guys. It really is. So we'll have to see. Moen might win out. Clint Moses, another member, says All-State Big 12 Mafia. That's right. Let's see here. Do this one for me, Moen.
Mosito X.
Hey, everyone. Good to have you here, Mosito X. Caleb Ramirez. Hi, everyone. I'm trying to get to as many people as I can here. Let's get to a couple more. We got Daniel Dill. Think how much the SEC and Big Ten would get for 15 to 20% equity. That's a great question. What do you guys think?
I mean, the back of the napkin math would be if the Big 12 is worth 800 to $1 billion and their media rights deal is half the rights of the SEC or Big 10, like, that seems to be a fair starting point for discussion, if not actual.
That is insane, the amount of money.
I would put it at 3 times.
3 times, 3x.
3 times, because it goes beyond the media value to me. It goes beyond. I mean, you're buying into brands like USC, Ohio State, Michigan. So I think there's value that's not obvious there.
Right. Well, I know this money's not going away, so anything is possible. Keep chopping in the house saying All-State Mafia. And then Conundrum says, sorry, but you'll be paying All-State the money. What do you think about that?
They're actually my insurance company. I already pay them money.
There you go. All right.
You know what the funny part is? All the insurance companies are almost all attached to football in some way right now. And the companies that you wanted to be the most serious actually have like the biggest roster of comedians selling their stuff about how you'll need them when you get in a car accident or your house explodes.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very, very true. When that big accident happens, they're there to help pick you up. Look at this. Peek around the corner. Greg Flugar, college football OG for social media on Realignment, says, thanks for being here, Greg. If it takes private equity for my beloved Minnesota Golden Gophers to acquire the talent needed to be able to complete a modern day forward pass, I'm all for it, baby.
It's got to be Kraft for Minnesota, doesn't it? With Greg, it's got to be Kraft.
I think I agree with him 100%. If Minnesota wants to compete, go write some checks, get some good players.
Look, if Minnesota wants to throw a forward pass, then we're going to have teams like Iowa wanting to throw a forward pass. We can't have that anymore.
But at least Target's headquarters are within, running distance of the Gopher Stadium.
You guys are
I'm
funny.
sorry, Immaculate. I couldn't resist.
Lee in the house saying mortgaging the future for the present, bad idea. So let me turn it around on you, Lee. I actually think it's the reverse. I think they're investing in the now for the future. Because if they pay a little bit money up front, kind of like they subsidized the Big 12. We're talking about this now. Let's just talk about this and get it out in the open. The Big 12 got better adding the four corners. Nobody disputes that. But they didn't get money. They didn't get the third part of that funding from Fox for the pro rata. So actually, every team or every school in the Big 12 took a haircut to bring in those four schools. In 5 years, though, don't you think that was a small investment to give what could be a very, very fulsome reward in 5 or 6 years of the next media contract?
Yeah, it was a defensive measure in the short term, right, to make sure that everybody stayed together. That has offensive and therefore revenue bearing potential in the future, right? Like
Right.
you had to do something. I think we think that the ACC would have poached, but I don't know they're competent enough to have actually done that beyond what they did. But yeah, I think ultimately that's the goal. Like if Utah or whoever fill in the blank team makes it to the playoffs, makes it in the top four, makes it to the finals in the next few years, it's helpful.
Right. I agree. Moen, what do you?
Look, they all have their pros and cons. I mean, everybody, you can't come looking at this as a 100% good idea or a 100% bad idea. I think you have to look at all the pros and cons. And for the Big 12 right now, they have to solidify themselves as the third conference.
Yep.
In order to do that, they have to either poach ACC teams or produce some consistent winners on the field. You're not going to be able to do that without cash.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that was Greg's on Greg's show earlier today. He said essentially the same thing, just a few different words. Is that it's an investment. Any money you put in now is an investment for both the short term and long term. My idea has been from the beginning when I think I heard about private equity. It was what, March or April last year when they started talking about it with Endeavor. When that came up, it's like, what would you do with the money in your conference or in your school? How would you strengthen your school or your program to want to get more of those players, like Greg said, more of those players to stay home? The best players come and play for the schools that have the money.
You're right.
Okay.
You're right. I mean, it's look, if you want to compete, you're going to have to compete in an even playing field. Right now, these teams in the Big 12 can't afford 20. Most of the teams in the Big 12 can't afford 22 million in salary cap.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point, right? Like, do you want to be the guys who own 100% of the old model of owning typewriters
Right.
as the whole thing is going away? They can't. Maybe not everybody can afford 22 million, but you got to give them the opportunity to be able to afford some of that millions, right? If you don't want to have everybody leaving. So as much as we can all do the we walked uphill both ways kind of thing to the old model, like it's not happening. It's changing. So who's going to be smart enough to get ahead of it and adapt as best you can while maintaining as much of what you love and we all love about the sport? Like I think that's ultimately what we're trying to figure out and see what we can all live with, well, or have to accept, I guess, because it's not like we're all in the decision making places about it.
You don't let me forget about this thread because I can't write right this second. Remind me to bring this back up. And it's, do you want the 5% of a growing enterprise, or do you want 100% of the zero enterprise? The enterprise is eventually going to be relegated in one form or another. And let's just get this out there. It is not about the Big 12 catching the Big 10 and the SEC. People on Twitter, you're going to see a lot of people put these ideas forward that it's about doing something to catch those two conferences. Nope, that battle's been lost. It's been fought and lost. And now we know what the value is compared to the Big 10 and the SEC for the Big 12. So now it's about the Big 12 trying to get and be the only representative on that second tier. That has to be their goal.
They're solidifying that they need to solidify themselves as third conference.
Right.
While the ACC exists, they're conference number 4. Unfortunately, while Clemson and Florida State still have a home in the ACC has bigger brands at the moment.
Very good.
Right, and the reaction I saw online was understandable, right? Depending upon which tribe you're in and how you feel about things. But there was no scenario where the Big 12 or any conference for that matter is going to solve all of their future funding needs and opportunities with the first deal. It's a series of deals and opportunities. And it's a pretty good big one that doesn't take, and we don't even know that that's actually the dollar amount too. Like he's negotiating in plain sight. Like I'm sure putting that out there was trying to see if somebody's going to be able to one up it and let people know they're in the market for that. Just like they were in the market last week about expansion.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Conundrum takes exception. He thinks that I'm trying to snow everybody with my opinion. Just so you know, Conundrum, I've had this opinion from the very beginning before the Pac-12 blew up. I had this opinion once I started doing my show and realized it's a zero-sum game. For the Big 12 to get better, the Pac-12 had to die. And I said it for 18 months. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. This is the exact same thing. It's not about the money in comparison to the SEC and the Big Ten. It's not. They will never bridge that gap. The media dollars are starting to retreat, and those contracts might not come back again like that in the future. So they need to do something else to crutch themselves up to that, shared second, third spot. If you have 1A and 1B. Go ahead, Ron.
In a lot of industries, over time, what were the Big 6, the Big 10 become the Big 5, and then one day you have the Big 3 record companies, the Big 3 soda brands, the Big 3 account. Like it just, you kind of have to play with where you think things are going to go and whether you're going to, eat or be eaten ultimately.
That's very fair. We've got a couple more people I want to say hi to, and then we're going to get in the door. Conundrum, I appreciate you engaging. I really appreciate you being in here, generating the comments, because not only does that help us, but it keeps the conversation going, right? Because there are going to be some people that don't believe me, Rock or Mo, and they might believe you. And it's great to have those conversations. Then that's what we're here for. So I want to thank you for that very much. Let's get a couple more shout outs and we're going to be done. I want to, let's see, Rock Chalk 94 says Conundrum private equity hasn't done anything yet, though. Totally true. It hasn't been implemented. We probably won't know what the answer to that is for a while. Stephen Vitt says many organizations, sports league and otherwise, are otherwise using a form of private equity. I'm not saying that's right, but it's reality. Is this even a moral question at all? Does it affect you guys in your heart? Private equity's coming in and they're ruining college football?
Well, college football's already been ruined if we're going that route. But it's been ruined 1,000 times before. Remember when the forward pass was first introduced, it ruined college football.
Right. That's
when
true.
segregation ended, it ruined college football. There's all these things that have ruined college football, and yet college football stands here today with the richest media deals it's ever had. So I don't think college football is going anywhere. I totally get people's point of view that this is going to be the thing to kill college football, but this is just at the top of the list of a long list of things that are supposedly going to kill college football.
Rock?
Yes, it's the latest thing that you deal with, get annoyed with, and assume the sky is falling. And yet somehow I still watch more college football now than I ever have, including schools that aren't competing, because I don't really watch the NBA anymore, except for maybe in the playoffs, and not for any other reasons that will drop in the chat. I'm just not as interested in the storylines that exist. I don't watch baseball as much. I freaking watch everything about football, NFL, and college. That's how I'm here after meeting you guys, right? So
right.
It's not exactly the same way. And that's even after my school has been pretty meh for 20 years. I'm still more into it than I've ever been, despite all of that. And there's a lot of people in our world, but what they're trying to do is to get the secondary and tertiary people who absolutely don't care about this, right? They're not on our shows watching it. they're the ones who go, wow, that looks interesting, or
Yes.
I know those two schools. That's what they're trying to do ultimately, and preserve the growth of the sport, and that's those additional eyeballs, no matter which way they go about getting them.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Let's get two more shout outs. Then we're going to jump to the first article. Mr. Beaver, very active on Twitter. Good to see you, Mr. Beaver. I can't wait to see y'all in the Big 12. So, is today compared to yesterday, there a greater chance that Washington State and Oregon State end up in the Big 12 with private equity or with not?
I think it's lower. I think it's much lower now with private equity coming in because they're not looking to entice Oregon State and Washington State to join them. They're looking to entice Louisville, Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, North Carolina State, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, these schools into joining. Nothing against Oregon State and Washington State, by the way. I love you guys.
Absolutely not.
But if they wanted you guys, you would be there right now.
Yeah, they since we started the show, we are fans of Washington State and Oregon State. I think Mr. Beaver knows that. It's nice to remind people that we've been one of the few outlets from the very beginning in realignment that have been advocating for Washington State and Oregon State. And I put our record up against anybody except for maybe Greg.
For sure, you guys have definitely been there, and I don't know, I could be an outlier, and just like we all have our good or bad takes. I somehow think that the play that those two schools wound up having to do by force and what the contract they did, that they could be in a way better position come December, January than anyone ever expected, right? Because if you go through all of that and you somehow pull off pretty great and impressive ratings, and that would therefore mean that you pulled in a national audience because like your games were compelling, no one could sit there and say they were riding anybody else's coattails, right? So maybe it's justice delayed instead of justice denied.
Yeah, that's a good quote, by the way. What's that from?
I know what it's from, but in the moment I can't think
off
of
the
it.
top of my head, I can't remember where it's from either, but I do love the quote for sure. All right, and then one more comment here from Morris Simmons, another member, says Big 12 is stabilizing the conference. Great move. Miami, Louisville, Virginia Tech, and Pitt to the Big 12. I know somebody here on my panel wants Miami to be going to the Big 10, but other than that, what do you guys think about that comment?
You're muted, Rock. You're muted, brother.
I was just going to say I can't really see comments from people that have blocked me, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. He's blocked you? Okay, well, it says Big 12 is stabilizing the conference. Great move. Miami, Louisville, Virginia Tech, and Pitt to the Big 12.
Still can't see it. I don't know. Moen, you want to take this one?
Yeah, they're stabilizing the comp. Well, for starters, they haven't signed this deal yet. No deals have been signed. This has just been leaked purposely by Brett Yormark. Yes, it stabilizes the conference. Yes, it could get some expansion schools to the Big 12. So yes to all those things. I don't agree with that lineup, but
they're close regardless. They're
close. I want to get one more comment in here from Conundrum. Sure. We could.
Yeah.
Well, if we're going to accept it, let's accept it. It's pro football. It's been pro football.
Yeah.
It's just because they come up with little euphemisms like entering the transfer portal. It's called free agency in the NFL. NIL, that's just called a paycheck or a signing bonus. So it's pro football. College has been pro football for probably the last 25 years, the more egregious happenings in college football.
I think you could go all the way back to the Bowl Alliance.
Sure.
What was that, 96?
95, I believe.
95, 96. In my opinion, the Bowl Alliance broke everything. And that really they have been since semi-pro football.
Yeah, I think that's right. And they were always semi-pro football. I know everyone wants to have like Shangri-La, but the legend of college football also involves the legends of what was going on behind closed doors and recruiting, and that predates most of the people's consciousness who are in this chat right now. It wasn't, wow, somebody just figured that out in 1984. afford to buy a car for somebody.
Right.
That's not what happened. There's, there are books.
That's true.
Listen,
All
we
right.
gave away a lot of cars in Columbus throughout the 1970s.
Why do you think there's so many car dealerships and now they're just getting bought up because their business is closed and supplying college athletes under the table? Now they can just roll them up into big national entities.
If you, and this is off topic, so this will be the last thing we say and we'll move on. But in my opinion, if they had wanted to not make this, they wanted it to keep college football the way it was, no realignment should have been available. All the conferences should have stayed where they were, and you don't have this consolidation of power schools in just a few conferences. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You have to kind of go. I don't think it was an intention to get to this place. Is what I would
agree
say.
with that. I agree. Yeah.
I think there's a couple of schools here or there that made a decision, right, for potentially valid reasons to go to a conference, but then it just eventually accelerates into ultimately always towards the dollar, right?
Absolutely. Yep, you're exactly right. All right, so we're going to get to our first article, first topic. This was covered this morning on Peek Around the Corner. That would be Flug Empire, PATC on Twitter. And I'm just going to read these 4 paragraphs really are where we're at. Big 12 members are considering the first of its. But Moen, would you mind posting the link for this for me? This is the link, so everybody can go. It's a Dennis Dodd article, CBS Sports. And I'll just read this. We do have a couple of people that are blind that have sent me notes that they like the articles to be summarized. So we're going to try to do that for you. Big 12 members are considering a first of its kind private equity investment to ensure the league's long-term financial and competitive security. Multiple sources tell CBS. On the table is a possible cash infusion of from $800 million to $1 billion with Luxembourg-based CVC Capital Partners, so they're out of Luxembourg, in exchange for a 15 to 20% stake in the league. These sources said a portion of the money would go directly to the 16 conference members, and the partnership would give the conference access to CVC's investment services and clients. And we'll go into what that means in just a second. Just to know a little bit about CVC, they're a global private equity giant that manages over $200 billion in investments worldwide. And they do this for a living, people. So this isn't just something they're doing off the cuff. This isn't back of the napkin math here. While one source described the talks as pretty serious, many league presidents need further convincing. Persons who spoke with CBS Sports preferred to remain anonymous. So everybody's not running around and crowing about this. There's some people that maybe are thinking a little bit, maybe want to put more time into it, a little bit more money and attention into it. What we do know is that Endeavor and them as a gateway to other financial service offerings have been talking private equity with the Big 12 since right after Brett, in fact, probably the month Brett Yormark started, almost 2 years ago now in August. He's been talking to them from the very beginning, long before it came onto the news. So just first question to you guys, are you freaked out by this offering, or can you see a path forward for the Big 12? Moen, you first.
Yeah, I can see. I'm not freaked out by it. I think we all kind of knew it was coming. There'd been talks of Florida State and Clemson both working with private equity. So I think this is just a natural evolution of that. Whereas a conference is in a weak position, wants to strengthen itself, wants to invest in itself, saying, "Hey, we'll sell off 20%, and hopefully 5, 6, 7 years down the road, we sign a much better media deal and we can buy that 20% back or, refinance it somehow." So I don't think it's a terrible idea for them. But like I said, it does have its cons too. You are basically giving up 20% of your conference to a firm that is interested in making money. So if you're not making enough money to pay them back, they will find ways to make money. And that includes increasing things like ticket prices,
right,
increasing, beverages and concessions. cutting staffs at sporting events. So it comes with some cons. It comes with its pros. You have to just figure out which one outweighs the other. As far as I think the pros outweigh the negatives in this happenstance, and I think Brett Yormark realizes that, and I think he's the commissioner to do it.
Before you go, Rock, let me get this first super chat in here from Sergeant Pickles. Not only a member, but also a contributing part of the College Football Mafia Network. For $2 super chat, he says, Yormark can go way out of the box. Hard Knocks Big 12. I would love that. I would watch Hard Knocks Big 12.
Only works if it's Colorado.
No.
Yeah, as long as your school's not on it, man. Because like the next thing you know, your quarterback's going to be out on the fourth play of the first game.
Yeah, that's true. That is bad karma, isn't it? That's not good.
It is if you're a Jets fan, which.
All right, so let's get back to that question. Rock, what do you think about it? Are you freaked out by the offering? Do you think it's something that's a valuable tool and something the Big 12 can use going forward, or are you kind of scared off by this whole thing?
I'm kind of more of it's the Thanos, right? It was inevitable, right? To quote from Avengers kind of zone, and the only reason I think it got delayed in execution or first to market was just everybody understanding what the likely lay of the land was going to be: college football playoffs, first degree of settlement. Clearly, they've been having this conversation. This didn't just materialize since, the settlement with the players on the past NIL deal. All these things are churning out there at the same time. So I think it was inevitable, and it's not shocking that the Big 12 is the first mover in this. There's pluses for being the one establishing the market. I could also see a conference like the SEC or Big 10 letting the market establish itself and come in as the Goliath that everybody knows is out there and can one up the deal versus like creating the market and everybody else goes down from there. So I'm not freaked out about it. I think it was going to happen. So it's more of how do people implement this and execute this, and what is the downstream realities that people are going to encounter at your specific school. It's probably the ramifications of this being implemented at the Big 12 may not be the exact same thing from school to school within the conference, right? Like not all of those schools they're all awesome, but they're not created equal in like what their financial grasp is, right? So I think that's the unknown quantity that Moen's alluding to, that when it trickles down, what does that really mean to everybody?
Another super chat from another contributor to the College Football Mafia Network. Thank you, Becky. We appreciate you being here. Both you and Pickles were on Greg's show, and I just tip my hat to them. Big West Mafia on Monday nights, 8 Eastern. They run a great show, and it's just getting better. So I want to encourage everybody to look for that on Monday night. Becky says, all I know is Syracuse and Georgia Tech on, so let's see, Georgia Tech to somewhere.
That's Syracuse. What do you think, guys? Sounds like Becky's had a couple of Syracuses and Georgia Tech.
I mean, it kind of sounds like we got to put a Mafia hit on Becky because she knows it has to be organic to cause a drink, and that seems pretty forced. But there's also no reason not to drink if you have a drink in front of you, and even if mine's water.
In my opinion, a super chat supersedes any of those other rules. You pay, you get access. So
yeah.
I want to thank everybody for being here. Let me just remind everybody, we do have a drinking game tonight. If you hear the word Syracuse or you hear Georgia Tech, take a swig, enjoy the show, and sit back. Just know that I am telling you, you can't drive afterwards, and you might not remember all the good jokes. So that's something you'll have to deal with later on. You can always watch the show recorded. That's what I'm saying. Another shout out to anybody that wants to make sure your comment is read tonight. It'll have to be a super chat. Even member ones, I'm really trying to get through because we've only got a little over an hour tonight. So I just want to invite everybody to be participants. We will look at the regular comments, especially member ones. But if you want to guarantee it being on tonight, since we're on for a little shorter, it'll have to be a super chat. All right. So that got in the way. I actually had a different question. Where did it go? I'm sorry. Here we go. Keep chopping says, how is it possible for every team in the conference to be really good and equally good? Honest question. Who said that? Moen, did you say that?
No, but I mean this is the thought that's put out there with Super League. It's what is Minnesota, Purdue, and Rutgers doing for the conference? They're
Right.
bottom dweller. Well, guess what? Uh, you can't have a conference full of if you had Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, and they were all in the same conference. One of those teams is going to have to be a loser that year. You're going to have to be. So I mean, you've got to have winners and losers. I think the ideal is to get to where you have more people have the ability to become winners than are destined to become losers.
Very sharp. Rock, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, it's trying to create within your conference the ability to NFL it, right? Where you don't have the draft choices to mitigate that, and but you try to level the playing field as best you can, as opposed to the salary cap. Each market, even though there's a salary cap in the NFL, each team still has different revenue streams because of ancillaries and things that they can do. So it's that opportunity where you could have a really bad team. That's probably more a result of management than fundamental things that make it impossible for that last place team to one day rise above. So how can you do that in the Big Ten as a specific example? That's what I think you're looking for.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, and that's a good assessment. So the comment I have here to sort of spur on the conversation wraps back to the article that Dennis Dodd wrote. Was there anything else in the article, because I'm not going to read the whole thing, that stood out to you guys that we want to make sure, in the sense of we're sharing as much of these stories as we can, that Dennis was trying to tell everybody?
No, not really. Just reading through it.
That was the gist of it, right?
That's the gist of it.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. Rock, what do you think about that? Was there anything else you wanted to make sure we touched on? You're on mute. We can't hear you.
Sorry, there's so much noise in all these things that we're talking about. I think the first shot in the race happened today, right?
Right.
The public one, the one that we all get to see and hear. But that also means that others who didn't know that there was a race to get into, and that could be advertisers or brands, know that that's an option that they might not have thought about before, because it made so much noise beyond just those following the Big 12 or college football even.
So I'm not sharing my screen tonight because I've got a little bit of handshakes. My medicine does that to me every once in a while. But there was a quote, a tweet that was put out by Wild Ute that got a lot of run. I'm trying to find it really quick. Basically, he's describing where'd that link? Oh, I found it. Okay. So this is a quote from Wild Ute. It says, how can the Big 12 permanently bridge the P2 revenue gap? Make a lot more money. He asked a question, how much? How would you do that? Negotiation is a much stronger media rights deal if you have taken private equity. How? He says, eliminate competition and take over its territory, time slots, and exposure. How? Finish off the ACC by poaching a few of its schools. So here on our show, and you guys know this, we have been advocates of a strategy for the Big 12, and that would be Brett Yormark in particular, to don't worry about, this isn't a nice game. It's not about being the nicest guy to your neighbor down the road. It's about survival, and it's zero sum, right? So at this point, do you see any reason why the Big 12 strategy should not be destabilize the ACC and get as many schools once it's not stable?
The right schools, yes.
Okay.
Right? Like
I didn't say every school. I didn't say every
school. Many. Well, as many. What does that mean? Like, you could destabilize the ACC, and Boston College would be like, "Can I have some more, sir?" Right? Like,
no, sure. So what would it be? Yeah. So why don't you dictate that? Tell us what you think that means.
I think it's the list we've gone through before that makes sense, that are either going to add value today, or, as we alluded to earlier, have the potential because they're investing or have the right team in place to grow as a brand that becomes more important as the intervening years go on. And there's some that are probably the obvious ones, the Louisvilles of the world that we've talked about. But maybe there's one or two that we don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes, and they're going to rise up, because there's always a school that rises up, two schools that rise up and become part of the, maybe not the blue bloods, but the lexicon of the teams we all pay attention to every decade, and one or two that like fall out of the mix forever,
Right.
never to be heard from again. So maybe there's somebody outlier that we're not thinking of, even within the ACC, that isn't obvious to all the analysis we've all done, or that Ute's done, or rumored about.
Yeah, I think Duke would be at the top of that list, right? We know they're not really a cultural fit, these other things, but they are a basketball super brand, and from that standpoint, I don't think they would turn them down at all. Moen, what do you want to say to that?
Yeah, I don't think it's wrong to seek the demise of the ACC if you're the Big 12.
Right.
This is survival. I mean,
it is.
The deer is a cute animal, but it's also a delicious animal, guys. So,
but I have a question though. Is the Big 12, from your guys' view, especially you, Bomber, that at this point, is there any question about the Big 12 survival? Because who would be the one that picks them apart? Like, the ACC is not going to be in that position unless you go back to the rumors about Utah is going to go to the ACC.
It's not about that.
And if it's coming from and if it's going to be picked apart by the, or several teams from the Big 10 and SEC, right. I don't know there's anything the Big 12 could do about that, right? That would be very difficult to block based off of your initial premise. So, like, is there even a question about their survival? Like, I don't know that there is. Maybe how successful, but the ACC has legitimate questions of, is it going to survive at all? Is it going to split into, Ivy thing that Immaculate has talked about? Is it going to reconstitute itself in some way? Pull up the Tulanes and South Floridas of the world. Like, I don't really hear that around the Big 12.
So to answer your question directly, I don't think there is an idea the Big 12 won't be around. But I do think the longer they're unstable, in other words, the longer they're not the clear, far and away third best conference, and they can't take that until the ACC begins to fold, right? So we need FSU and Clemson to do their work. Once that happens, then I think it puts the Big 12 in a much better position. But I want to get through this idea that if for some reason, as Big 12 fans, we should feel guilty about our conference, having this opportunity to continue to grow from strength to strength if they're able to bring in 2 or 4 schools.
Right.
And I don't see a reason why you should feel guilty, because it's survival of the fittest. And nobody felt sorry for Washington State and Oregon State. Nobody felt sorry for BYU for 50 years, right? So that empathy, I just don't have it.
You should definitely not be going into you should definitely not be going into the prevent defense of conference realignment.
Right, exactly. Shut it down and just hope everything works out for you. Yeah.
Right. And keep this in mind, Bomber. If this deal goes through, you strengthen your conference.
Right.
You're basically saying Utah, you can't leave.
Right.
Arizona State, you can't leave. So guess what? If the Big 10 wants to expand out west, that's only going to leave them Stanford and California.
That's right. Yeah. The Gore, that was another thing that was in that article, that the Gore would probably be strengthened. Or maybe they'll just get rid of a Gore. It'll just be a flat down, up and down contract. You're in the Big 12. You're in the Big 12. Like, this is a vice. We're not. Right. This is not something you're going to go to court and try to escape from the conference to go somewhere else. So that would come with it. Really quick, Ryan Willie gave us $5 for a super chat. Sorry, it took me a second to get to this, Ryan. I wanted to make sure we flushed out those ideas. Prime will leave Colorado after this season. I said that 2 years ago. He won't go to Georgia Tech, but I have a feeling Florida State will make a change if they announce they're leaving. I think Florida is another spot they could end up. I think he could end up in Miami. Yeah, what do you guys think about that?
I don't go to Florida. I I don't see Mario's not going anywhere in the next year or two. There's just literally no way. The guy who just ascended to the presidency at Miami is the guy who brought him in. There's no way he's going.
Okay.
There's
I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. Even ahead of that, that would never happen in the next year or two. He's going to get a longer leash than a Manny Diaz would have gotten for sure.
Okay.
I also don't think he's going to have to worry about that problem, but that's like a totally different thing. But Prime at FSU. I mean, I don't know. Norvell had a chance to leave now? Why would they? He had a chance to leave recently if he wanted to. So I'm not really sure like what that change of Prime going to FSU right now would be.
Yeah, I love you, Ryan, but I do not see Florida State moving on from Mike Norvell. He literally had them a perfect season last year.
Yep.
And if not for ESPN BS politics, they'd have been in the college football playoff.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Now, if Norvell had a bad season last year, I think he gets run. If they're 5-7 last year, I think he gets fired because the year before they were not good. But they went undefeated. I mean, you can't do much better than that.
I mean, I would pay to see Prime go to the Gators. That would just be awesome to just eat popcorn and watch that between those two schools. But
well, I don't think that's out of the realm of reason. I think that could happen. We'll have to see. I'll have to see. All right, before we move on, let's get to some comments here. We've got really lively comment section. Again, I deferred to members' comments first, and then we also read the regular comments. If you want to make sure we talk about your idea, it'll have to be a super chat. Just be clear. All right, let's start here with Becky Go Huskies. We're going to start at the bottom. Biggest question I have is how many of these can they borrow, and how many teams would actually use the money in the manner it's meant for? Arizona, for instance, is in real bad shape. I believe, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the idea was, and we just read that in the article, some of the money would go to the schools, didn't say how much, and then the rest would be used for some sort of a strategic pool, so they can reinvest in other things. I would say realignment. What do you guys think about that?
War chests.
Yeah. War chests.
War checks to acquire backpacks.
That's right.
Yeah, more backpacks.
Gotta have more backpacks.
That's perfect. I absolutely love it. Thank you, Becky. It's a great question. Appreciate it. Let's see here. Andrew Ferguson, another member. All these members, guys, we're 100 people watching this live, and everybody's a member, it seems like. If you're not a member, you need to consider becoming a member of the College Football Mafia Network. This is Bomber's Hit List, the sort of ad hoc show we're doing on a Thursday. We appreciate everybody for being here. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. And last but not least, turn on your notifications so you know when we do tweets or we put out notices about shows. Andrew Ferguson says, we at Colorado have it easy because we would be the Colorado Buffalo Wild Wings. I'm telling you, there's some creative names I saw out there today on Twitter.
That's a good one, though, for sure.
It is. Thank you, Owen. Appreciate it. Conundrum again. So ZVZ Capital will loan?
I think that's own.
Own 20% of BYU, Baylor, and TCU. Say your prayers. No, the football athletic problem. Sorry, the athletic departments aren't part of the general education fund. So you're welcome to sue, but you're not going to get any access to the church stuff. If the church wanted to even put, a tenth of a percent of their income every year into BYU athletics, outside of the honor code, you could get around a lot of stuff. They would be up there with Ohio State, Michigan. They could spend so much money you can't even imagine that would be available, but they haven't made it available. BYU's sectioned off their athletics. So I get your point, though. Those are all church schools. What do you guys think about that?
TCU, I don't believe is.
Are they non-denominational now?
I believe they're non-denominational.
Okay.
Baylor and BYU are still denominational schools.
Yes, that's for certain. Yeah. And Miami is too, right?
No, Miami is definitely not.
Oh, okay.
Miami's private for sure, but definitely no religious affiliation or origin.
Didn't it used to be before they went into big time football when they were a private school? I thought they had a religious affiliation. No. Okay.
Not to my knowledge, but
Okay. All right.
it won't be the first time I've been proven wrong today.
I got you for sure. Keep going, right?
Well, the thing I was just thinking about, and maybe somebody else caught it, is there was no conversation that I remember seeing in any of the articles about how it's okay if you guys don't make money. The Drew Weatherford
Right.
approach that we met, where recently, what I'm alluding to is we had a conversation recently with with Jeff, who had an excellent take on the whole idea that um, investment in private equity for colleges thing that Drew Weatherford, a former Florida State player and alum who's very vocal, there was a conversation about private equity not expecting a return. That seemed to be missing today. But I guess a good question will be, is there going to be anything materially different when a conference does a conference-wide deal if they do one with private equity versus what might happen at a specific school place where maybe looking aside at profitability could potentially happen if the booster and donors are associated with that private equity for their own school?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. At the end of the day, we are in a situation where if you want to play in big time football, you're going to have to meet that minimum pay requirement, that 22 plus million that is going to be shared across all your sports or just football. Every school gets to dictate where that money goes, but it needs to be shared with the athletes. And that's kind of that's the bar now to be in this upper level. So Boise State, can you? I mean, I love Boise State, right? They're fun school and everything. They've been a good brand here on the west side of the country. Can you see them coming up with $22 million a year just to pay players? Right now, like today, with all the conditions they have, with the TV contract, the $500,000 or whatever they get every year, is there any chance they could come up with $22 million a year as the minimum payment for athletes?
I mean, don't see that one, but I don't know if they even have to, right? Like they haven't been having the same recruiting budget or the same all these other
Right.
things, and have figured out a way to make things work. So maybe their path still is similar to others. They're gonna have to have some money for sure. They're not gonna be able to be zeroed out, but maybe they still have a path.
Moen, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, of course they're not going to be able to pay $22 million, but they're a G5 school. If only they had rich boosters who could pay $100 million and get them into a Power 4 conference.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be tough. It's certainly what they would want. And they have done a better job with NIL and stuff like that. So I think, they're still working to get there. But at the end of the day, I just think that number is too much. And we don't know. That hasn't been approved yet. A judge hasn't signed that settlement. So that's not actually, cut and dry done. But I think it is basically telling everybody this is the minimum barrier to entry price. $22 to $24 million to give athletes every year, not a one-time payment. So anyway, all right, we're moving right along here. Coy, good to see you here, Coy. Another member says 50 days till the Pac-4 officially joined the Big Ten. Are you guys looking forward to that there, Moen?
I am. I'm looking forward to the programming on August 4th. Going to see, unfortunately, I'm sure a lot of USC beating Big Ten teams on the classic games. Not so much of Oregon's classic games because they don't have any.
They don't have any in 25 years.
But, some Washington games, so it'll be fun.
Those Rose Bowl games, they got to get ownership of those things. Just replaying Rose Bowl games would be fantastic.
Oh, they have ownership of them.
Do they? Okay, well, there you go then. You want to add anything to that, Rob?
Half of my house is officially excited. I'm counting down the wonderful days and lighting candles for the excitement of SMU joining the ACC soon. I mean, so I don't have to wait 50 days. I have to wait, 16 days to celebrate. Happy, though they, but in all fairness, I think that, they're going to have a pretty good year for them in the conference. And a lot of the people in my conference who have poked fun of how they came in will probably take an L to them.
Yeah, I mean, you do get the greatest games of the guy who killed 5 hookers while he was in college.
That was a rumor.
That was a rumor. You're right.
Uh,
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Troll grinding cheek clapper. The name of the so far, I think this name has been the one that stood out the most is probably being the most unique that we've got in the Mafia network. But anyway, so troll grinding cheek clapper, $4.99 super chat says kinda on CFP. Got my shirt for the USC LSU, and it says with Saban gone, LSU has a title chance. Also a shirt for SC UCLA, University of Completely Lost. I guess that's ass. I don't get the rest of it.
I guess
but,
assholes.
Okay.
The
All right.
H, yeah, I was gonna say the H seemed random, but maybe it was filling in that blank,
Maybe.
or it was thrown in along with opening up your new private equity account.
So you live in LA, right?
I do.
So what's the chatter around the Big Ten? Is UCLA basically saying thank you very much? We'll now bend over so you can screw us every year. I mean, where are we at with the two schools' attitudes right now?
You know, it's one. I may be just not picking up on it because I'm not really paying attention to local media specifically. But most of the UCLA conversation this offseason, began with the Chip Kelly departures and how the
Right.
coaches are coming in and what's happening in recruiting. So like the rebirth and the optimism that anyone has when they have a new coach coming in, especially if it's one of your legendary players that you're optimistic for. And then right in the last 48 hours or even a little bit longer, it's been around the chancellor being named, the new the incoming president, the chancellor in UCLA's case. So that's been around there. And most of the USC conversation I think has been that I've heard, right? So I don't want to speak for all of USC Nation, especially someone who's already got two shirts around there. Has really been about like how is this team going to compete in the Big Ten, and what are they doing to fix the defense? So I think that's a byproduct of both past performance in the last couple of years not being what the expectations might have been, but also an anticipation for joining the Big Ten and what those kind of matchups are going to be to balance out the offensive prowess of that team and the speed that a lot of the West Coast teams are thought to have with the needs for entering that kind of conference. So I think just two different worlds going on there. But ultimately, there's a little bit of mourning for the Pac-12 going. Like everything that was happening with the last game of this sport or whatever was clearly recognized and celebrated. But I think there's a lot of excitement about just the matchups and things that are going to continue. And their chief rivals also over the last several years, with maybe Utah as an exception, are still joining them.
I would really prefer UCLA be relevant, because when they're relevant, the chatter on the West Coast is huge. It's all over. When UCLA is good, USC and UCLA are as good as they come when it comes to rivalries. They just haven't been good. So I actually wouldn't mind seeing UCLA do well. We haven't done our previews with our team yet, but in the Big Ten, there's no more West. We just say in the Big Ten, how many games does UCLA win this year?
I mean, I have to look at it more. I'm like, I would
5.
If you top, guessing, I'd say 5.
Okay. All right. Well, when we go through the schedule, we'll see if we can remember that. I have them as 5 or 6. I believe they play Minnesota on the road. I thought that they might be able to steal that one, but I could be wrong. I haven't looked at their schedule for a while. We'll do that though. That show's coming. Ryan Willie, another super chat, $5, happens to be a member as well. I like the replays of the Wisconsin versus UCLA Rose Bowls. How many of those were there? 2? Do you know? Are there any? I'm asking Wisconsin.
Oh yeah, there were some. I think
and
Ron
UCLA.
Dane. I think the last one was with Ron Dane was their running back.
That was a
Big
while
Ron
ago.
Dane. Yeah.
Okay. I've always liked Wisconsin. They're tough as nails.
Wisconsin won their Rose Bowls when they went there.
Yeah.
So.
It'll be interesting to see which visiting. I haven't looked at it this closely, but which visiting teams from the Big Ten will finally make a Rose Bowl appearance.
Yep. Fair enough.
There
you go. Thanks again for the super chat, Ryan. We really, really appreciate your loyalty and being a member of the Mafia family. All right, let's move right along here. Keep chopping, a Rutgers fan. Thank you for being here, Keep chopping. You've also been a loyal fan recently. A few months ago, Ryan Day needed $13 million for a roster. Now Cincy needs $22 million for a roster. Damn inflation. Yeah, that's funny. Well put, Choppin. I appreciate that. You guys want to say anything about that?
I was just going to say, Moen, you should take this, but it seems like a good spin job of everybody thinking that Ryan Day only needed 13 million for a roster versus what they probably actually paid for. But I'll defer to Moen on that one.
Moen?
Yeah, we paid significantly less. Don't listen to what Rock and Rain's trying to tell you. It was just a couple million.
I think it's closer to 20, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. It's 20. When you're drinking, you lose the zero.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. That makes sense. Keep chopping. Thanks for being around. Thanks for being a loyal member of the family. We really, really appreciate it. Illini Ted says, also a member, says Miami was the convicts, not the Catholics.
So this I know, and I will find it, but Illini Ted, feel free to do this. Go back and look at those T-shirts on and see which team had the most players arrested. And I can tell you that it was not in South Florida.
Well, you got a bunch? What do you mean you got arrested in Arizona?
I'm just saying, like the year that Notre Dame put those T-shirts on, and you look at who people got, who had more problems with the law, it was not the team in Miami.
Okay, all right.
Miami cops were doing their job, looking the other way.
That's all right. Really quick, did you guys sign in as administrators? Because I got to go in like 10 minutes.
Am.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Don't want to close it and shut everything down when I leave. I've got about 10 minutes left, guys, and then I got to go to a meeting. But Rock and Moen are going to keep this coming. And Stan, as long as you guys want to keep doing good comments and super chats, or members, sign up to be a new member, and they'll stick around longer. It's kind of a bribe, but we'll take it. Devil Frog, the OG of the Mafia family, says private equity seems to be working fine for Formula One racing and Live Golf. Why not Big 12 athletics? Is Live Golf doing well? I know F1's doing fantastic.
There were a lot of people at the Memorial Tournament this year, so somebody's watching golf. I still don't get it, but
yeah, Memorial Tournament is PGA, so if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I mean that whole thing, how I think the general point is that it's in play in sports, right? And it's definitely helped F1 in the U.S. as a specific example, right? It's been a big part of the expansion here and turning certain things. I mean, there's a Formula One race right outside Hard Rock Stadium every year now in Miami, which is pretty awesome to go to, and actually built out a lot of the making tailgating even more interesting because some of the permanent things that they put there. But I think we always get to the line of the professional level versus the quote unquote amateur or collegiate level, right? And the perceptions dance around that a little bit differently. And there's just a lot of stuff happening at one time.
Well, I know that stuff continues to change over time. And what might have been different 2 days ago could be 180 different next week. And Live Golf is one of those examples that they basically built something they knew they were never going to make money, but they did it for promotion dollars. And right now, Saudi Arabia is really happy with that. So it's turning their public perception around. People aren't talking about them killing Khashoggi and killing journalists. They're talking about how bad they're running a golf league, and it's starting to help. So I know the country is actually happy with what's going on. All right, I'm going to share my screen. There's one thing I wanted to get to before I left, at least. Let me make sure if I get it right. Yeah, there it is. So this was on Twitter. Let me bring that comment down. This was on Twitter today. D5 Terps is somebody, and he's been on the show before. I appreciate it, Terps. He put this out there. Let me take that comment off so everybody can see it. This Big 20, I would love. And I know it's not something that most people think is good because Stanford's on there. But if you went with pretty much everybody on here, that conference, I think, would be worth maybe 50, 55 million. Do you guys disagree?
I don't know if I agree with that in terms of if there's enough brand additive stuff to create that, at least initially. And that's not to disparage anyone in there. And I'm not even trying to be like, well, mine is the only one, because I'm not even sure, what everybody else's value would be. But I don't, I think there's a lot of peer schools coming in, right? Or incremental schools that might be worth, a couple million, a few million more than what the average of the Big 12 was. But who knows? Sometimes it's the collective stuff and the interesting things that can expand the geographic footprint, right? It'd be an easier conversation, I think, to do some math if the Big 12 had its own network that was going to get some of the carriage fees and all those other things to whatever degree those are going to last as streaming takes over time. But it's certainly an interesting look, though I have to be in denial about the bottom right side.
Right. I would say that I would prefer it was the Big 12 as it stands today with 16, and I would prefer it was Miami. I would prefer it was Louisville, Vautech, and who's the fourth there? I'm missing.
Stanford and Miami.
Oh, Stanford is the wild card. I hate Stanford, but from the brand value, that would add quite a bit of value to the Big 12. I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you so much. This means so much to me. You guys are awesome. I do look at you as my family. And I just want to let everybody know I'm selling now the rest of my Big 12 Mafia rally towels. I said $15 the other day. Nobody said anything. So I'm going to drop it to 10. I'm going to take a loss on them, but I want you guys to have them. So for $10, send me a Venmo and $10 in your address, and I'll ship that out there without you guys having to do shipping and handling. Anyway, all right, that's all I need. You guys want to say anything else to me before I go?
I'll see you tomorrow.
No, it's good catching up.
Yeah, it's good to see you too, Rock. Thank you so much for coming on. And hats off to all you out there tracking this realignment, tracking this stuff on Peek Around the Corner, helping us on our show, 100 people on an odd Thursday night. Our show's not normally on. That means a lot to us. I really, really appreciate it. Other than that, everybody have a great night. Stay out of trouble. Don't drive if you've been drinking. And I will see you tomorrow night. Peace out.
All right, now that Bomber's gone, we're renaming this the shit list. It has some problems, and you're going to hear about it. We're going to run about another 15 minutes. I'm going to pull through as many comments as I can pull through, guys. So feel free to keep them coming, and we will try and get to them, of course. Start with Victor Guyona. I think Yormark pulled another move on the AAC like he did with the Pac-12. He was proactive and signed the TV contract before the Pac-12, led to the demise of the Pac-12. He's going to get the ACC.
I think he's going to get some of the ACC.
DP, our resident Clemson fan, this is a scam. Convince everyone they need private equity to be competitive. Meanwhile, everyone else has access to private equity, neutralizing any perceived competitive advantage. This is a scam.
Well, not everybody's going to have the exact access to private equity, right? Like some schools are going to have individual deals that they can do on top of a conference deal, and they may not be of the same scale. They won't necessarily have them be able to do more revenue share on the direct side of if there's a cap, but there's other ways that money can flow through that creates imbalances potentially.
Ryan Willie, the evil badger, is ready to cook.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
He has gifted 5 memberships to the College Football Mafia. Chris Evans, Lee, Cougar Tracks, Gary Chadwick, Gene Watson. You were all gifted a membership by Ryan Willie. Make sure you thank him in the chat after this show. Enjoy those benefits. Go watch some Wild Ute Universities. Go watch some Timeline. If you're still here in the chat, like I said, thank Ryan Willie in the chat. If you are watching on demand, make sure you thank him in the comment section. If you're in the chat, feel free to use some of those custom emojis. Thank you so much, Ryan Willie. We appreciate your generosity around here more than you know. You are the evilest of evil badgers to us. Mr. Monkey says, the good news is when the Big Ten and SEC change their name via sponsorship, they lose the cachet they currently have over the Big 12. It's true.
Does it matter? Like, are most people thinking, like, in some ways, I can understand like the Rose Bowl is the example I used earlier, but does it really like what does it really do to anybody in terms
No,
of
but it's a situation where they could say, "Hey, look, you're in the same boat we're in."
right? Understood.
Mr. Ed Wayner is in the house. Anything Yormark can do to raise conference revenue to try to close the gap to P2 can also be done by the P2, and the Big 12 will not be able to close the gap. This is not a permanent close the gap measure.
Yeah, this is taking what you can do to improve this situation, as opposed to waiting for some one size fixes everything, which is probably not going to happen.
Morris Simmons says the Big 12 is sending a message to the ACC.
Completely agree.
They're rolling up a vest and putting fish in it. Andrew Ferguson, how does Indiana, Illinois, Northwestern, and Rutgers bring value? Utah, Colorado, Kansas, and Oklahoma State are worth more than those Big Ten programs. They are gravy training on Ohio State and Michigan. Kansas, you might have an argument for. Colorado, you have an argument for. But Indiana, Illinois, Northwestern, and Rutgers are all big in research. So they get research money that gets shared among the conference. For example, Indiana does a lot of cancer research with Ohio State. Illinois and Northwestern do a lot of research with the University of Chicago, or they used to with the University of Chicago. But the other thing is with Rutgers paid for itself. Rutgers did pay for itself with its market.
And it almost, for the moment at least, right, unless the theoretical super leagues and conference dissolution were to go away, those schools are just not going anywhere, right? They have for squatters' rights at a minimum, right?
Devil Frog, I don't see that question in the chat. Yeah, it's not showing up on my chat, brother. If it's a tweet, you're gonna have to let me know if it's a tweet or not.
I just started mowing. I think if it's the one that it's referring to, it should be started now.
Okay. My simple question for those who hate this plan is, what is their plan to help the Big 12 to improve financially? Great point.
Yeah. You can't just...
Very good point, Larry, the GM.
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, what would you do if you didn't do this and you're the Big 12 and you have that sort of revenue gap and you need to make your schools be in a position to hopefully do as much rev share as they can and be strategically ready to take opportunities at a conference-wide level? Like, what else do you do with the revenue sources you have currently to address that?
Thank you, Larry. That's a great point, and thank you, Devil Frog, for pointing it out. Again, Bomber left me with a backlog of stuff here, so I'm just trying to powder through it as best I can. Connor Johnson, Mr. Beaver, I lean towards Conundrum's take. Private equity is handing over a lot of autonomy, not dissimilar to lobbies and politicians.
Yeah, it's the world we're in right now. I just don't see how it's going to turn back as much as I wish it were.
Shonsky, they are not using private equity to entice ACC teams to come to the Big 12. They're using it to stabilize the conference. You guys are killing me. And see, after I did a whole show talking football this week, Shonsky's back to his old ways. I think, why can't it be both, Shonsky? Why can't they be stabilizing and killing the ACC at the same time?
Exactly. Why can't you talk conference football realignment and college football? Right?
There you go. Doesn't have to be black and white. Shades of gray here. Cougar Tract is in the house. Good afternoon. Recently a made member by Ryan Willie. Mr. Monkey says SMU was just ahead of their time. Well, they got caught though, so.
I mean, by just ahead of their time, like, was it 35, 40 years ahead of their time? I don't remember when that all came down. Was it the 80s or was that later?
It was the 80s, 84, 85, 86. That's when that guy allegedly killed 5 hookers while he was playing there. Keep chopping. Ohio State been giving out Carson's Trans Ams and Studebakers. Maybe a little after Studebakers. They weren't winning when they were making Studebakers.
Nick Saban has his own car dealerships now in his other life. I'm sure there's no coincidence.
Andrew Ferguson, there's a way to save the college football by working together. The Big Ten and SEC are just as much to blame for ruining college football. A coordinated model for the top 48 schools would be amazing. Uneven conferences is bad. But it goes to the question we asked earlier, Andrew. How can you have an equal conference? You're going to have every team's going to be 6-6?
Well, even right now, what are those 48 schools? Right now, those 48 schools, if you were trying to do that, are actually spread across 4 conferences right now. If you were just doing that math, that would be 4 by 12. That's not going to happen. No one's losing numbers. So,
yeah, I understand what you're saying. You don't like conferences that are too top heavy, but I don't know how you make. I think the new model requiring them to spend, or I think the Big Ten conference is going to require people to spend up to that $22 million. I think that's going to add more parity to the conference. Becky Go Huskies. College football is like the European Basketball League. Basically, you're a pro, but to get into the league, you got to get drafted. Okay. Don't disagree with her. Conundrum: if they're not employees with collective bargaining agreement, it's not pro football.
Yeah, I guess we'll see what happens with Congress today and how that does impact any of these conversations with what passed out of committee. Immaculate and others have long threads in there. I'm still skeptical, even if it's attached as a rider, that it will remain the same after it gets to the Senate, where the different politics are leaning in a different direction. But we'll see what happens as it moves through.
Keep Chopping says Syracuse orange brought to you by Tropicana orange juice. See, now that's organic.
That is a good one.
And we've got some more like that. First, we'll get to Becky's. It's called Work Coffee without coffee and with tequila. It's a margarita. Yes, I like work coffee as well. Conundrum says, I guess the Big Ten better pick up Utah and Kansas before they sign their PE agreement. No. Well, I don't know. If they don't have the money to do it, they're not going to do it. Keep Chopping with Notre Dame Irish Spring. He comes back with another one. South Carolina Gamecocks brought to you by Tyson Chicken.
I love these. These are so great.
Caltech, maybe, but never Cal Berkeley. Hey, listen, if you got to go to 6 teams on the West Coast, and those teams for the Big 12 are locked up in this PE agreement, your options are Cal, Oregon State, and Washington State. You could throw in San Diego State in there as well, but I mean, for the Big Ten, the only option for them would then be to take a Cal, and that would be your 16 pod in the West.
Right.
Dan Miter says he's going to create a time capsule of the P4 for tomorrow night. Okay. Sounds good. We'll come up with some ideas on what we can put in the time capsule.
Do we get to include remnants of what was the P5? Because there's some cojones of some commissioners that could probably go in there.
I was going to say the envelope with the math on the back that proved that UCLA would make more in the Pac-12.
We can put the Raycom deal for Jim Swafford in there.
Yes, a handshake. Put that secret handshake. We'll end it with this. Clay Johansson says Michigan Wolverines, Wolverine work boots. So we'll go with that. You guys come up with some more creative ones. We'll get them tomorrow on the Big freaking Friday show. It'll be Bomber and myself. We'll try and have a guest there as well. I don't know who it could be. Might stay tuned. It might be a very special guest. But other than that, do you have anything else you want to leave the audience with tonight, Rock and Rant?
No, I think that, look, it's just it's been rumored forever. Now it's starting to come to fruition. It's out there in plain sight. It won't be the first. Some schools are doing it to position themselves for the future, and some of them are just going to have to do it, or their conferences are going to do it out of desperation. I think there was the stuff about Conference USA that came out shortly after. So there'll be a lot of announcements, I think, coming forward, and a lot of rumors and speculation. But the other thing, just to think about, is just how does it trickle down to the schools, and that's the next thing to see. We've heard all the stuff, especially around Florida State. Let's see what happens on the school level as well as the conference level.
And with that, we are going to say goodbye from the hit list from College Football Mafia, as presented by Mint Mobile. Make sure you sign up with Mint Mobile, save on your mobile, $15 unlimited plan. So until tomorrow, peace out.